Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Before I get into today's review, do want to remind you if you enjoy the Gaming Gang and you'd like to support the outlet, we've got a couple of ways of doing that. You can make a one-time donation by way of PayPal or become a member of our Patreon. There are links in the show notes for those. And of course, be sure to hang with the gang over on Discord. There is an invite link to our Discord server also in the show notes. Today, I am going to be reviewing A Wolf in the Fold, part of Frightshow Classics from Yeti Spaghetti and Friends. This adventure is written by Chris Halliday. The 24-page tale is available in PDF over at Drive-Thru RPG for $5. Now, as we take a peek at this adventure, you're going to be thinking, well, wait a second, Jeff, you're taking a look at a physical adventure, but you've only told me how to get it in PDF. Well, it could be a little tricky picking this up because Frightshow Classics just had a Kickstarter. It is sadly over, and I have not seen any late pledge information or anything like that. What I will do is I will share an individual's contact information from X as well as Facebook. You can reach out to them. I do understand that the Frightshow Classics adventures are $15. I can't tell you what's going to be available because there are quite a few adventures in the Frightshow Classics line, but that is how you can currently get the physical adventures. All right, having said all that, let's swing on over to the other camera, because here I've got A Wolf in the Fold for Frightshow Classics. A few things to mention before we get stuck in. First of all, the fine folks over at Yeti Spaghetti and Friends were kind enough to provide me with this review copy. But neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. It's important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the adventure, but I do want to give you a good feel for what you're going to find inside. And then lastly, this is an adventure. And unlike most of my adventure reviews, I'm not staying spoiler free. There are going to be spoilers. So if you're a player, you have been warned. And of course, if you're a game master, strap in because we're going to talk about A Wolf in the Fold. First thing I should point out is just taking a look at the cover, just the title itself kind of lets the cat out of the bag. Or I guess in this case, the werewolf out of the bag. Myself personally, I would not allow my players to see this cover or know what the title of this adventure is. All right, first thing we're going to do, take a peek at the credits page. Let's give credit where credit is due. This is set during the Victorian era, and it takes place in a village in Wales. It's actually located right along the border of Wales and England in a place called Hawkesbury Village. And what's going on is this village is undergoing a series of animal attacks, which has been killing off livestock. Suddenly, one evening, a person is murdered. So there's a doctor's friends with the investigators who writes asking them to come to the village to try to help solve this mystery. A Wolf in the Fold is not designed for any specific role-playing game. Now, it is percentage-based here with the stat blocks. So yes, you could easily run this with Call of Cthulhu, and it would make for a fine scenario for Cthulhu by Gaslight. You could use Chill. Anything that's percentile-based would be pretty easy to utilize. Honestly, it's abstract enough that I think you could convert this to just about any role-playing game system. I should also say that it is mentioned that you don't even really need to have role-playing game rules. You could run this adventure just with the stat blocks. I don't know about that because some aspects where they talk about the different levels of success kind of throws me a little bit. So I don't know. I got to be honest, I would certainly look to have a particular role-playing game system to utilize this with. So the investigators are going to arrive in the village. They are going to meet with the doctor. They are going to give them a breakdown of what's been going on. And sadly, in the time between the letter being sent and the investigators arriving, someone else has been murdered by the beast. Now, the villagers all think it is some sort of supernatural being, kind of a hellhound or barghast. Once again, looking at the cover, we know it's a werewolf. I mean, it's pretty obvious. But it's important to keep in mind it's not just a werewolf, it's werewolves. So we will have various different set pieces for the player characters to investigate. And as long as they roll pretty well with their investigations, as far as their various different skills, they should start piecing things together, leading them to believe that it is a werewolf that is behind these killings. Interestingly enough, there is a major player here. It is Sir Henry, and he is an NPC that the player characters are going to deal with quite a bit. It would not be surprising if the player characters jump to the conclusion that they are the werewolf. But the funny thing is, it's actually not Sir Henry, it's his staff. So it's not a werewolf, it's werewolves. And it turns out that his valet, who Sir Henry thinks is completely devoted to him, and who Sir Henry trusts implicitly, hates Sir Henry, had been infected with lycanthropy. He is a werewolf. There are some interesting wrinkles to the werewolves in A Wolf in the Fold. They can be damaged by regular weapons. They do regenerate if they receive damage from any kind of silver item, then their regenerative powers cease for that day. So the next day they would return. So the werewolves won't be as difficult to dispatch compared to others that you would have, say, in a Dungeons and Dragons adventure where you have to use magical weapons or silver weapons. So I liked that. I thought that was pretty cool. I will say there is a confrontation. There's a big battle at the end here, which is fine. Remember, this isn't necessarily supposed to be a Call of Cthulhu adventure. This is supposed to be an homage to the Hammer films of the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. But strangely enough, at least the way it's written, the valet reveals that he's a werewolf to Sir Henry and the player characters, and then they're planning on killing them all. And he locks the door to the study that Sir Henry and the player characters are in, but he's on the other side of the door and starts doing kind of a Bond villain reveal, turns into a werewolf, and then tries to tear down the door to get at him. I thought that was kind of weird. Maybe I'm misreading it. Maybe I'm not. I don't know. So I would obviously tweak that. We also get 8 pre-generated characters for your players to choose from, and they are pretty cool. They are pretty interesting individuals and will make for a good adventuring party. All right, so that is a peek inside Frightshow Classics, A Wolf in the Fold. Let's swing on over to the other camera so I can share some final thoughts as well as my review score. Yeah, I've got some minor quibbles with this adventure. Like I said, there's the big battle at the end where the way I read it, the valet locks the door. He's on the other side of the door. I don't know. Maybe I just misread it. But I've looked at it a few times. And I'm like, no, I think that's what's supposed to be going on. Not that huge a deal. Also, as far as trying to run this just with the stat blocks in the adventure itself, I think that would be kind of tricky because of the way that it shows various different levels of success. Like I said, I would think you should have a role-playing game system in mind that you want to use with A Wolf in the Fold, because there's going to be other things that come up in the adventure that are not going to be covered by those stat blocks. and you're going to want to have some rule system that's going to allow you to resolve those sorts of things. The adventure itself, I really dig because the premise is the werewolves want to spread the lycanthropy to other workers throughout the UK and then rise up and overthrow the elites. I was like, well, hey, that's kind of interesting. That's pretty cool. I also find it interesting that the second victim turns out to have been a werewolf who had attacked the first victim, and they were killed because the other werewolves didn't want them revealing to the village that there was werewolves around. So, like I said, I like that. It's a cool adventure. It's going to take maybe a session to complete. So, depending on how long your game sessions are, I tend to run 5-6 hour sessions. So, I could easily see my group getting through this in a single session. If your sessions are shorter, say 3 hours in length, maybe it'll take a couple, depending on how much investigating your players end up doing. But all in all, I like A Wolf in the Fold. I think it's pretty cool. So, on a scale of 0 to 10, I give Frightshow Classics A Wolf in the Fold 7 out of 10. Interesting. Like I said, I got some minor quibbles, but all in all, I think this will be a pretty fun adventure for most folks. All right, that is it for this time out. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. It'll not only let you know when I share videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for our latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer, and until I see you next time, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.